On the 5th of May, the governor Alarcón, in the name of His Majesty, took possession of the place called San Antonio, establishing himself in it, and fixing the royal standard with the requisite solemnity. The father chaplain having previously celebrated Mass, and it was given the name of Villa de Bayard. This site is henceforth destined for the civil settlement, and the soldiers were to guard it, as well as for the site of the mission of San Antonio de Valero established by the said governor about 3/4 of a league down the creek. On the 6th of the said month, the governor, with 25 men and the father chaplain, left in search of the Bay of Espiritu Santo and arrived at the creek which they call Cibula, which is about 8 leagues from the above-named place. Present Cibala Creek near Selma, Bear-Comalco border, current suburb San Antonio. On the way, at 3 leagues distance, a creek which they call Salotha is encountered. It is bordered by trees such as live oaks, hackberries, and elms. There are also brambleberries and wild herbs on the banks. On the remainder of the way several ravines are found, all of them dry. All of the land is rough and overgrown with mesquites and very tall bushes so that one can hardly see the men on horseback. Present Salotha Creek near the bridge on the Austin-San Antonio Highway, called Arroyo Salagar. Salober by Fathers Isidro Felix Espinosa and Raymond. Highway 78 between San Antonio suburbs Universal City and Shirts. On the 7th, the governor left the said place for the second river of Guadalupe, which is about 7 leagues away. At 5 leagues a creek was found with little water, which, since it did not have a name, the governor called Arroyo de San Miguel. On the 7th, the governor left the said place for the second river of Guadalupe, current Guadalupe River, named after Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe in 1689 on southern end by Alonso de Leon. Father Damian Massanet and Domingo Terran de los Rios named it Rio San Agustin in 1691. Fathers Espinosa and Antonio Olivares called it the Guadalupe in 1709, while Espinosa and Raymond in 1716 called it the San Iban, calling the Comal River the Guadalupe at the time. Afterwards, at about half a league, one encounters the river of Guadalupe. The first branch, the distance, is about 1.5 leagues Comal River near New Braunfels, and from this to the second branch, current Guadalupe at New Braunfels. The creek as well as the 2 rivers are densely overgrown with poplars, oaks, savins, and pecans, and many mulberries and grapevines. So far as can be noticed, water cannot be extracted here owing to the great depth that it has. The governor reconnoitered to the junction of the 2 branches of this river, which is about 2 leagues from the fort, and his lordship says that its flow is as great as that of La Veracruz Vieja, where the Comal River joins the Guadalupe. The river in Mexico is the present Rio Jamapa near Veracruz. On the 8th of the said month, Mass having been celebrated, the governor, in the name or His Majesty, took note of the 2 rivers of Guadalupe, fixing the royal standard on the said location as an indication of possession. The said place was left at about 8 o'clock that day for the creek of Salsapudes, to which the governor gave that name because it is located in a thick wood. It is about 10 leagues from the river of Guadalupe, probably current Mill Creek. The road is about 4 leagues of goat and open ground, the rest of woods. This day we traveled between southeast, and many detours were made to avoid woods, the compass being used because the 2 Indian guides had fled fearful of the other Indians who live on the coast. On the 9th, the said place was left for a creek which the governor named Entraverlo, because near it are 2 other creeks, very deep and miry. And the wood is that in order to extricate oneself from this entanglement of very high trees, grapevines, and cocoa mecates, one calls loudly for a knife, probably current Nash Creek. The rest of the way is wooded, but passable. It is about 10 leagues from one place to the other. All the way is rough and full of dry creeks. At 7 leagues we came across the river of San Marcos, which runs very deep. Current San Marcos between Otini and Sladen. On the Adams Umwelt League, Gonzalesco, TX, northwest of Gonzales, deep probably meaning high bluffs. Father Mezquia describes noted a distinct series of large white mounds of earth with bubbling bogs between, which is thought to be no other than the sulfur springs at current Palmetto Park. There are rocks in places. All the bank could not be reconnoitered the density of the forest. Bison roam on this land, a fact known by the many tracks that are seen. On the 10th, a place was reached where the company was baffled as to whether to follow a river, which we judged to be the San Marcos. Gonzales at the confluence of the San Marcos and Guadalupe rivers. At a distance of about 4.5 leagues from the above-named place, this river joins the Guadalupe River, which is deep and swift. And for this reason, it was recognized that the other was not the real San Marcos River. Actually, it was the real and current San Marcos. Belief at the time was that the San Marcos flowed into the Gulf of Mexico. In this spot it forms a pasture ground, large and suitable for raising cattle. And since we had lost ourselves, we retraced our steps about 1.5 leagues in order to go in search of the origin of this river and to inspect its source. It is densely overgrown with live oaks, poplars, and pecans, and other trees that are unidentified. Near the junction of the said rivers there are also many buckthorn trees. As soon as we stopped in the said pasture, the governor went upstream to see if he could find a ford. And on the way his lordship saw 2 Indians who, with loads on their backs, were walking toward the woods. They were called, but, not recognizing the people, they took flight. This day, we traveled south in order to follow the bank of the river. Some crosses were left on the trees for the Indians as a sign, and on them some leaves of tobacco were hung, in order that, coming to reconnoiter, they would see that we were Spaniards and would come in search of us to get the tobacco. We traveled about 6 leagues this day. Interpretation of the account of Father Mesquia has caused some authors to suggest the party continued south in search of the coast and reached at least the Guadalupe at Jaén. But it is believed also that the party returned north to the El Camino Real up the San Marcos at this point SDCT. On the 11th, before leaving the above-named place, the governor sent 2 soldiers to see if the tobacco, which we had left at the junction of the rivers, was still there. And they said that the tracks left there indicated that the Indians had carried it off. We left the place and this day traveled about 5 leagues until midday, and found a crossing, although it was a difficult one. 2 soldiers, having crossed in order to see if there was a good place to ford on the other side, came to another wide and deep creek which they could not ford, probably Current Plum Creek near the border of Gonzales and called Huelco, Silas Fucal League. That day we continued our journey upstream, and arrived at a ravine which joins the river about 10 leagues from where we left in the morning. The way is very rough, owing to the hills, but in parts level. Many creeks are crossed, and ravines without water, most of them with rocky beds. On the 12th, we left the above-named place in search of the said river, probably mean source of the San Marcos River, and traveled about 12 leagues. The way is wooded and, in places, open. Every day we saw tracks and we always thought they were of bison, until this day, when about 5 in the afternoon, upon entering a thick wood, we saw a black Castilian bull. This made us think that all the tracks were made by the cattle, which General Alonso de Leon left exhausted on the return from his first trip to Texas. On the 13th, after having left this place, at about noon we reached the ford of the San Marcos River, and until now we could not believe that it was the San Marcos, because everyone says that the San Marcos River enters the sea several leagues distant from the Guadalupe. The crossing is about 8 to 9 leagues from the above-named place, probably near current Prairie League, Guadalupe Cone northwest of Luling. The ford is wide and good, and at the entrance there is a thick wood of the same kind of trees that are downstream. Probably the ford used on the Camino Real later. The Yarnacogdoches road below San Marcos near Stringtown community. This day we traveled in search of the Guadalupe River over the same road that leads to Texas and went about 4 leagues, so that in all this day we covered 13. We stopped because a cloudburst caught us, which lasted unceasingly all night. And here as well as in San Antonio the thunderstorms are so frightful that all those who have experienced them in Spain, as well as in these parts, say that they have not seen any like them. For the shortest last 6 hours, with thunder pealing like harquebus shots in battle.